Big news today after the SEC is reportedly hacked on X as they put out fake news that the Bitcoin ETF was approved, causing hundreds of millions of dollars in liquidations. We'll go over that in today's episode and more, as well as my exact price targets for where I think Bitcoin will head if it is approved today, as well as a clip from my podcast with none other than Bitcoin billionaire investor Tim Draper slamming the SEC for not doing their job. It is going to be a very good episode, so stay tuned. Also, I will give you one altcoin poised to absolutely rip at the end with price targets as well. This is what I'm focused on. I can't wait to dive into all this. And without further ado, I'm your host, Megan Nilsson, aka Crypto Megan. And let's get right into it. So a lot has happened since last night as the SEC put out fake news that the Bitcoin ETF was approved when in fact it was not. And we're going to go over just exactly what happened and how it happened because it's pretty unreal. So let's get right into it. Here we have over 300 million has been liquidated from the Bitcoin market amid the fake SEC post about an ETF approval, and Gary Gensler here looking like a clown because he is not doing his job and he has repeatedly not done his job. I'm going to play a clip for you guys today from my podcast episode from Tim Draper, just absolutely slamming the SEC, pointing out all the things he, as in Gary Gensler and the SEC, has in fact not failed to protect us from. You and I and this grassroots community, we have to protect ourselves. So I'm happy that I'm in this with you and that we can police this space together because it's up to us. We are on our own. In fact, we are protecting ourselves from the SEC, as crazy as it sounds. So let's continue. Today, the SEC grants approval for Bitcoin ETFs for listing on all registered national securities. So this was the tweet that they put out. Everybody went wild. 100x leveraged longs. People were going nuts, longing Bitcoin, only to see on Gary Gensler's X profile that the SEC Twitter account was compromised and an unauthorized tweet was posted. The SEC has not approved the listing and trading of spot Bitcoin exchange traded products. I mean, this should never happen in this market. Never, ever, ever. And to think that it was all because of the fact that they didn't secure it with a two-factor authentication code. It's basic level security that hasn't been adhered to here. I mean, how hard is it for someone in the organization to say, hey, this is really sensitive information, maybe we should secure it? And this is coming off the back of Gary himself warning about how crazy, volatile, and how much security you need to have in the crypto markets. And here we have this. I mean, I can barely believe it. X has just confirmed that the SEC account was indeed hacked by an outsider, and this was due to the account not having 2FA enabled. I mean, this is pretty unreal. And so before I get into all the memes and all the fun stuff, and also the price predictions, this is going to be a short and sweet episode, but I want you to hear from Tim Draper, Bitcoin billionaire investor Tim Draper, and what he has to say about our SEC. This was about a month back in our podcast recorded in Miami. Check it out. Back now.
No.
This is it. Like this is here to stay.
It just keeps coming. And and what's really a little frustrating is that we've had kind of a draconian SEC during this period with Biden.
Right.
And they have spread fear throughout the land. And that has sort of torn apart innovation. And so every time I meet a new entrepreneur, people go, why do you travel? Well, because every time I meet a new entrepreneur, they're saying things like, oh, we need to geofence this around the U.S.
Yeah.
We can't do, this is really cool. And we're all going, this is so cool, we got it. And then they say, oh, you can't have it. And I say, what do you mean I can't have it? Well, we have to geofence around the U.S. We don't want to deal with your SEC. They're just...
Nobody wants to deal with it.
And the SEC's sitting there with a bunch of rules that they're clinging to that are 80 years old.
I always say this. It's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole or something. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work.
They didn't think this through. It would have been very simple for them to just sort of say, okay, we're gonna let this thing rip. You know, Clinton did a really good thing when the internet was coming up, and the press was starting to say, how do you tax and regulate and whatever, you get in front of this thing. Clinton said, let's just see how it goes.
Which is not
And he just let
usual,
it rip.
right?
And as a result of just letting it go, we have Amazon in the U.S., we have Google in the U.S., we have Apple in the U.S., we have, you name it.
Right,
all
the
of those
tech
internet companies, Webflow, Uber,
versus
DoorDash,
all the ones that want to go offshore now.
And right now, all the innovators are going, well, I got to go to Dubai because they're letting me innovate there.
Right.
I can do an airdrop there.
Dubai
You can buy tokens there. You know, we don't have people protecting the widows and the orphans. And my feeling is the orphans need to be able to take risks because they've come off a tough childhood, and we're not allowing them to take a risk and try to make a life for themselves.
And have this incredible opportunity. You know?
And the widow, I haven't met a widow who wasn't rich.
That was a great
who are we trying to protect?
Gosh. Oh my gosh.
And these are protections that were from the 1930s, after the
antiquated
crash, the total bomb, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And what has our SEC done? Have they actually protected us? FTX was something that the SEC was all behind.
Exactly.
They're making, you know, artificial decisions for all the rest of us. I didn't want to go into FTX, but the SEC thought that was a good idea.
And why?
So they didn't know.
They didn't know, and
it's
they were probably involved
race.
on another.
You gotta let it rip.
Yeah. I remember the congressman who was grilling him about it and said, "Whose rulership was it that let the FTX collapse happen, sir? You were." And then he just keeps going on like, "What else did you do, Luna? Oh, you were. Like, what have you done to help move forward?"
You're not protecting anyone.
Yeah. No. Except their own interests, possibly.
So they're really. Because, I mean, think of how big the fines have been.
Oh, yeah.
That was a $4 billion fine for
the Binance fine.
Yeah, for.
And do you think that was a play, like many say, to just capitalize on Coinbase being the U.S. dominant player with BlackRock?
I hope not. I mean, I hope that it was just individuals making individual decisions. I tend to not be a conspiracist.
Yeah. I ask you because it's all out there.
Because it's systems that conspire. It isn't individuals.
Right.
Individuals are just doing their thing, trying to make a living, you know, going home to their families, doing whatever. But systems can be messed up. Socialist systems really destroy countries.
Oh, yeah.
Communist system, dictator, unless they're benevolent.
They stifle people.
They stifle people because they're telling everybody what to do.
Right.
It's like, you know, some guy in Russia points to me and says, "You're going to have to be a ballet dancer."
Right.
You know, I am the opposite of a ballet dancer, but they had a quota they had to fill of ballet dancers.
Right. And
so
Coinbase,
somehow I'm stuck being a ballet dancer for my life, and I could have been a venture capitalist.
Right.
And I could have done some cool things for the world.
I think that's going to help a lot of people kind of conceptualize what's going on. It's the systems that are failing. And, you know, Coinbase happened to be the one that was complying with the SEC rules. And just like you say, a lot of times maybe they just have no idea. And they're like, okay, here you are. You're doing what we said you should do. We'll use you. And maybe it's just that simple.
The SEC sued Coinbase. Yeah. I mean, it was just willy-nilly. It was like Coinbase is asking, how about, can we do this? Can we do this?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they get a lawsuit. It's like,
exactly.
What?
So it's a lot of stuff
it's
that doesn't
a little
make
bit
sense.
like the MAFIA enforcement right now. But it's
slap on the wrist, fines, move on.
It's systemic. So that's one of those things. You get Nikki Haley in there. I think she's capable of making some of these really important changes.
That would be absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. So there's a lot to unpack in what we just saw. In the draconian SEC, who was doing nothing to protect us in Tim Draper's words, nothing. We are all here on our own, but we're not on our own. We're here as a community, and we know what should be done. And like Tim Draper says, they should just let it rip. And nobody knows. What I do like about what he said was, when I asked him, a billionaire, right? You always wonder, do you think that this whole thing that happened with the SEC was a conspiracy and they did this on purpose to manipulate the markets? And I did say in a tweet today, I think we give them way too much credit. And oftentimes things happen because they just have no idea and they're lost. And if a billionaire is telling you that he believes it's systems that fail and less conspiracy theories, then maybe we should go with that. Maybe we should just understand the fact that the SEC has no idea. They're fumbling in the dark and they're just doing a terrible job and they need to let it rip. Let me know in the comments. Do you agree that the Clinton era was the way that we should do things, that the internet was successful and Amazon and all those companies were successful because Clinton let the market run free and work itself out? I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this, but I thought this was the perfect clip of the podcast to show you because it really does shine a light on a lot of things that have been happening, and the SEC has been doing a miserable job, and it's a disgrace, really. So as we run into these hours away from a possible Bitcoin ETF approval, the funds continue to cut their spot Bitcoin ETF fees amid competition. So they are fighting tooth and nail. This is a tough competition. They all want this new money to come flowing in, and they're all cutting their rates drastically. BlackRock and Fidelity just cut their rates to 0.25%, and ARK went down to 0.21%, and they're doing whatever they can to win this race. And then we have here, the text from Gary Gensler. If you're considering an investment involving crypto assets, be cautious. Crypto asset securities may be marketed as new opportunities, but there are serious risks involved. The only risk I see here, sir, are your false tweets and your fake news manipulating the market. I mean, we as a community, our grassroots community, as Tim Draper said, are doing a much better job at policing this industry and helping each other. And this administration needs to go down. It just needs to stop. Like Tim said, it's a mafia organization, geofencing everybody out. And I'm tired of it. So I'm speaking up on today's episode. And if you agree with me, I'd really appreciate it if you'd slam that like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments. So here we have another meme or kind of observation. Good morning, legends. Today should have been a big day about the Bitcoin ETF, but the SEC ruined the party and the climax is gone now. Their account got hacked because they didn't have 2FA enabled. Usually it takes hours or days to get your account back after a hack, but they got it back in 10 minutes. Yeah, right. So here's somebody that's skeptical saying that this was kind of like a setup. As I said before, and as Tim Draper pointed out, oftentimes this is just a lack of competence, and that's just what it is. And we have to take it for what it is. And we just need to move on and figure out how we can get this SEC out. Here we have the fake Bitcoin ETF approval tweet causes nearly 90 million in liquidations in the past 24 hours. 71,000 traders lost all their money and total liquidations came in at $223 million. Good God, this is the opposite of protecting the people. This is wrecking your people. You are wrecking your people right now. The biggest loss on a single trade was around $6 million occurred on Bybit. Also in the past 24 hours, the market cap of Bitcoin went down by about $50 billion. And the news just didn't affect Bitcoin. It affected other cryptos like ADA, AVAX, and Sol. In total, the crypto market went down by 1.15% in the last 24 hours. Can we now sue the SEC for market manipulation due to their incompetence? It's unreal, guys. Unreal. Now, jumping right into the price action to finish up this episode. Like I said, it's short and sweet. I just want you to be prepared. And if you appreciate that, also please let me know in the comments because I work hard on my research for this and I want to bring you guys the absolute best content possible. So let me know what you'd like to see more of if you appreciate that. And I appreciate you. So as you can see here, from the analysis from yesterday, Bitcoin broke out of the symmetrical triangle and it's currently trying to hold support around the $45,500 area. We had a bit of a wick down and we're just ranging now. So this is the main support that we'd like to see hold in order for this move to be able to continue. And here I want to follow up on Eric Crown's analysis, one of my favorite analysts in the space, because I've seen that this actual statistics on the volatility reads tend to work out really well for Bitcoin. And I like to group that with my other analysis and confluence, one of my favorite words, for other price targets. So this is really kind of starting to add up with what I believe will happen or could happen. And so this is coming off the read of the lows of the BBWP volatility indicator, we were at lows for quite some time, and since then have had this move start to play out. We are currently about 8 days into this move and 18% pumped since the move started. And so let's have a look at some of the statistics. Bitcoin must remain above $44,000, around $44,000 to continue in this bullish move. And more than likely, here's what's going to happen. We've got about a week left before we hit the average number of days that it takes for these moves to play out off the lows of volatility. And the average range is between 17% and 38%. So like I said, we currently are just coming into the 18% area, which is the lower end of the standard deviation of this move, and on day number 8. So likely about a week and a half left for this move to play out, as you know, we are on the lower end of this. So it would make sense if we did get that approval that we would finish out this move within about a week or a week and a half. And if we hit the average price move for this kind of read off the low volatilities, then we would be talking about somewhere around 27%, which would put Bitcoin right around $52,000. And that's a really interesting area. Why? Because we have the major 0.78 fib level resistance, which is right around $48,000. So we've got a massive resistance level at right around that range, right around the $48,000 to $50,000 range. So if we were to spike up to $51,000 to $52,000 in the average play out of this move, that would make a lot of sense before we follow that up with that massive correction that I've been anticipating on this channel for anywhere between 20 to 50%. Probably 50% is an outlier. I would say 20 to 40%, but we will have a massive correction. And if I had to say exactly what I think could happen, I truly believe that we could have one more move in Bitcoin's tank up to around that level that we just described, and then go sideways for quite a while, maybe through the halving in April before we see the next phase of this bull run, the parabolic phase. I know a lot of people are expecting, Bitcoin to just skyrocket up as we get $2 billion instant liquidity from BlackRock and all of this money flowing in. But I believe what is more likely is that we wick up to that level and then we go sideways for a while through the halving and into spring until we start to do our next move of starting the parabolic phase. So, I'm not buying Bitcoin right now at this moment in time. I've got my eyes on altcoins because that is where the real opportunity lies if you don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars to put into Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin from here could potentially do a 2x to a 3x, in my opinion, before the cycle comes to an end and we have another bear cycle. But the altcoins have a lot more room to run. So one in particular that I'm looking at that I spoke about yesterday, before I get into that, I want to show you this Bitcoin dominance chart. So we just hit a major resistance here. We're currently pulling back, which could be good for the altcoins as we get some relief. And maybe we will see a transition from the profits being taken from Bitcoin and rolling over into altcoins. Because one thing that's true about these markets is they are forward looking. A lot of people are saying that there's no way this is priced in. And in fact, BlackRock hasn't even been able to buy their Bitcoin yet in all of these Bitcoin ETFs. So that could be true, but markets are very forward looking. And I believe people are starting to look toward what could be the next altcoin that could get an ETF. And what's the biggest daddy on the list besides Bitcoin? That's Ethereum. And here's an interesting observation that Lark pointed out yesterday. When the ETF approval fake news happened, Bitcoin started dumping while ETH surged 7%. Will this happen again when the ETF will actually get approved? So, do not fade Ethereum. There are so many people on YouTube saying Ethereum is dead, the fees are too high, it's all about Solana. I don't believe it for a second. Ethereum is the number one, layer one with the most activity, the biggest developer community, and it's not going anywhere. So I'm paying attention to Ethereum. I'm buying Ethereum at these levels. And here is a chart just to show you where we're at and why it's such a good opportunity, in my opinion. So here we have by the breakout of this area, we've currently broken out. We're working on retesting this area at $2,378. And the measured moves are all the way up to $3,500 and above. So Ethereum, like I said, I believe it could hit $10,000 this cycle. It looks like we're starting to cycle into Ethereum's start of its run. And I'm getting exposure at these levels. I started talking about Ethereum in October, I believe it was October 15th, when Ethereum was at 1,700 and ADA was at 26 cents. I mean, if you missed that opportunity, you missed a good opportunity. But you're here again at another opportunity. And what does it matter if you buy it now versus if it goes a little bit lower, you start averaging in. It's not financial advice, but it's just what makes sense to me and what I'm doing. I'm not worried about like, what if we have this massive correction after a couple of weeks and ETH goes back down to 2,000 or 1,800? It's all a good buy zone. We're in the golden zone of altcoin buying right now, in my opinion. And if you missed the whole bear market that we just had, and if you missed when I started to talk about this and I started to say in my 200-day to Bitcoin having countdown daily videos, if you weren't buying then now is another opportunity. So let's not miss these opportunities. I just want you guys to be prepared to make as much money as possible during this cycle and all succeed together. And I'm happy to be in this with you. I will continue to police this space with you, and we must look out for each other because we are up against some pretty crazy characters, as you can see, and a lot of crazy things are going to be happening. So make sure you stay level-headed. Don't get emotional. Don't trade emotionally. Stick to your plan, and we'll be okay. I'm so excited for the news today, and I will be updating you on that. So stay tuned, and I'll see you tomorrow.